Hi guys, this is MakerOfBeauty, and I wanted to introduce my template number 1. You might wonder why I have my templates all over the map, and the reason to that, it corresponds to the folders that I created myself in a tool that I used to draw all this petal in, and some of them were coming out better than others, and that's why I don't really have the correct sequence, but it's definitely a correct sequence in my file folders. Any case, here's my template number 1. I believe it's very royal and very regal looking. This is what it looks like, and I just wanted to give you a couple ideas of how you could style this beautiful flower. So you definitely have an option where you're gonna, bend it so you can have a bit of a line right in between, and you can curl it up and down, and do it either for all of your layers or just one layer. I decided not to put in the line and curl it just on each side, because I think all these waves are very pretty, and if I did try to curl it, the inward and outwardly, where this one was down and this one came up. It's adorable, but I felt that it definitely hidden the beautiful waves that you have on the top. But it's a matter of personal preferences. You can definitely do it in many different ways. So I'm just going to show you how I basically curl them. You can either use this tool. On the smaller size petal, I definitely use my I forget what it's called. I always forget what it's called. But you can also use a butter knife, and that would give you the same pretty much tool. On my bigger petals, I did use my what looks like a rolling pin, because they're much bigger, and it just went so much faster. And I apologize, but I actually grabbed the wrong stack of petals. I was definitely showing you the right template number 1, but the rest of it is not template number 1. So let me just change it up. I actually have I have 3 templates that I cut it out and got ready, and it's a bit of a mess in here, so I apologize. But this is my template number 1, and like I said, it's quite beautiful. It's regal, and notice that the top of it is pretty wide open, right? And towards the base of it, it's like a good inch. Like if you were to draw the line from here until the end, it's almost like good 2 inches, maybe 1.5 inches on each side. So let me finish up gluing this petal, and then we're going to start the assembly of it. I do have my slit, pretty far out, because I like my petals to be, wide looking. And this time I did set my base to be wider, bigger than my tallest petal, because just by looking at its shape, right, like I can see that it's going to be a very open flower, and I don't want to cheat myself on a real estate space. So my petal was 4.5 inches, and my base is almost 7 inches. We have our petal in, and the second one is going to go right across it. One thing I wanted to tell you is that with this specific template, I did set my medium and my large petal to be the same size. I also think that with this particular petal, it would look actually quite nice if you were to put in, instead of doing 6 petals, right, you could do more and just overlap them, and you would have a nice full flower. That's not the look that I'm going for, but I just wanted to show you that that's definitely an option that you could have. I'm going to stick with the doing the 6 petals. So here's my third one. As you can see, it has quite a bit of a real estate space, right? But because my next layer is going to be the exactly same height, it is going to cover up that opening space and thereby giving me that open, nice look that I think just looks so great on backdrops. I think that I would probably have handled things differently if it was more for the display and you know, like flower arrangements on the wall. You just really need to adapt to what your end result, I mean, what your end product you're working towards to should be. See what I mean? Because it's so wide, right? It just closes that gap so very nicely while it's giving you that open look. All right, I don't know if I'm gonna run out of the real estate space, but just to be on the safe side, I'm only gonna glue one side of it, just in case if I have to tuck it in, then I can, and I don't have to worry about it. Having one petal laying on top of the other, because I don't think it gives a very nice clean look. Because I have this beautiful pearly champagne paper from Michaels, and I'm doing so many tutorials, I'm actually going to end up with two backdrops as a result. One of it is going to be very colorful, and I'll probably be using it for my kid's birthday a lot. It's a hot pink and yellow. And the second one is going to be primarily this regal, just beautiful pearly champagne color, and the centers are going to be gold. I have thought about making some of the flowers in a gold color too, but I just don't think having a large flower in a particular gold color that I have is going to be the best. So I decided not to do that and just do primarily white with the metallic gold that I have as either more like on my accent pieces, and you'll see what I mean, and use it for my centerpieces. Okay, so what I'm doing now is here's my two layers, right? 4.5 inches, 4.5 inches, and I reduced the smallest one to 3.75. I'm giving you these dimensions just so that when you adjust it for your own projects, you have a baseline to work off. Right. Any case, so because I'm going to be going for the backdrop that is in these two colors, right? And I am trying to bring in a bit more of a gold. I'm going to do my last petal in this color, and then I'll see what I'm going to end up doing it for the center itself. So first, let's finish up gluing the last side. I don't think I will need to overlap, but again, just to be on the safe side, I'm going to glue it. And by the way, I glued it on the wrong side, so I'm just going to leave this one aside for now. I glued it on the left side where I really need to go glue it not just on the right side. So I'm going to leave that one aside and just treat it as a regular one. And I just slightly burnt myself, which is not fun. But it is what it is. I'm going to grab this one and just put a new layer of glue on it and finish up. And again, right there, you don't particularly care so much about your first layer as much as you do the layer that you're putting your petal on when determining where it's gonna go. So I'm keeping him, putting the subsequent layers in between the petals. One thing I also want to tell you about this particular flower is that if you want to experiment, and I think I will probably do another tutorial to actually give you the visual of what I mean, you could not have the center at all. I'm gonna set that aside again just for a minute, but you could just start gluing the flower like this by itself, right? Starting of course with your large petal, not the smallest one. And then once you have all of your petals glued in, then you would glue the circle inside and continue layering in the rest of your petals. That would give you a very nice, tight, and a full look. So I would say that when you're working on a flower and it's going to be displayed like as a permanent thing, right, by itself, or maybe which is like which is most likely it's going to be like, you know, somewhere on a wall, then you definitely wanted to add as many layers as you can, I believe, because it makes it look much nicer. But when you're working with the backdrops, especially with the big ones, which is what I tend to do, right, like 7 by 8 is pretty wide, then, you know, I'm trying to be smart, and I don't necessarily want to spend neither my paper nor my time so much, because the more layers you have to glue on, the longer it's going to take you, right? And as you can see, I did have to tuck it in, so I'm glad that I left the petal unglued on that side, and I was able to nicely slide it in, and it just, you know, closed it for me very nicely. Right, so when you work with a backdrop, right, and especially if it's a big one, you need to be smart about it. You don't want to, you know, have 10 layers to just get one flower, because if you have 3 layers, you'd get 3 flowers. So it just, I mean, if you have the time in the world and you have a certain vision, you certainly can do it, right? But if you were doing it as a DIY for your own wedding or something, just, it's a small considerations to think about. Okay, so we have several things that I can do. I can put this center, small flower as a center, which I'm kind of leaning towards too because it looks beautiful. Or I can put this one. And honestly, I think either one would be just great. Any case, this is the my template number 1. It will be available shortly. Before I go, let me tell you real quickly how many sheets of paper I have used, because I'm sure you're probably curious about the count. So this is counting, right, with the large petal being 4.5 inches and using the 12 by 12 sheet. Never mind that something cut out of it. I use it for my base. For my, let's see, it was 3 times. In total, I had used 8 pieces of paper. Let me just do my calculations real quickly. So I had printed out 2 petals. That gave me 3 times, right? Right, that was 3. The medium, the smallest one was 2 sheets, which gave me 3 times. Then 5, right, I used 8 pieces of paper, and this is counting my base, right? That would be this one, and also including this, plus my fringe, which I'm not using, but I cut it out just in case I was going to use it. But so if you were a little bit more strategic, then you have 7 sheets of paper. If you are doing the fringe instead of this, you would still have 7. In my case, the reason I ended up with 8 is because I didn't know which center I was going to use, and so I needed 1 sheet for this and another sheet for the fringe. I did end up having more than just 1, right, because this is obviously a small flower. So as a matter of fact, I actually ended up with like 7 of them. So in any case, so just to give you an idea of how much paper you're looking for when you want to get a flower that is probably going to be good 14 inches. And let me just measure that from one side to another to make sure that I'm keeping myself. Okay, so it's 12 and a half. So 12 and a half inch flower, and you're using 7 sheets. That gives you again a base, right, to count how much paper should you get. And your count would obviously be different if you were cutting on 11 by, well, it's 8.5 by 11, because then you would end up with more sheets that you need to have versus the 12 by 12. Okay, thank you for watching my tutorial. Any questions, ping me. I'm pretty active on social media. I'm actually very active on social media. My email is available everywhere. Don't hesitate. I love getting questions. All the best.